Hi, good evening everyone. My name is Mary Claire Schmidt. I am an organizer with Centro de Trabajadores Unidos. Thank you for joining us this evening as we discuss immigration-related issues. Centro de Trabajadores Unidos is a worker center based on the southeast side of Chicago. We've been around for about 10 years doing immigration and labor-related work. And we were founded by a group of low-wage workers on the southeast side who are dealing with issues of wage theft when a large employer, a large factory on the southeast side closed its doors and didn't pay the workers their last few weeks of pay. The workers banded together and were eventually able to recover their stolen wages from their employers. And in the process of fighting that campaign against their employer, they created an organization to help future workers who are dealing with similar issues of wage theft as well as immigration-related issues. So fast forward 10 years and we're still on the southeast side. We're working now in the south suburbs, helping workers recover stolen wages and dealing with other workplace issues, abuse in the workplace, and we also help with different immigration-related issues. And especially now more than ever, we are doing a series of Know Your Rights trainings in the community on the southeast side and in the south suburbs. We assist with immigration-related services, including citizenship, residency, U visas, and other legal resources needed. And today what we wanted to do was do a quick Know Your Rights training. This Know Your Rights training that we're going to be doing is a training that we've been doing throughout the community for a number of years, and we've been doing it more so recently the past few months, given the change in the presidential administration, the attacks on the immigrant community, and this training is something that when we go into, we're going to be talking about the current executive orders that President Trump has signed over the past few months, as well as the differences in your rights with the police as well as your rights with immigration. And this is a training that community members who we've been working with for years now are actually doing in the community on the southeast side, in their churches and their schools, in different networks that they have. And it's a training that's available online as well. So to kick it off, we'll go into the training right now. If at any point throughout the training there are any questions that you may have, please feel free to call the number below, 312-738-1060. All right. So as I mentioned today in our Know Your Rights training, which is going to be a little bit of an accelerated version of the Know Your Rights training that we do in the community, we're going to be talking about Trump's 3 executive orders on immigration, the difference between your rights with the police as well as your rights with immigration, and the importance of preparing an emergency plan, as well as different forms of immigration relief that may be available. So the first executive order that President Trump signed has to deal with increased internal enforcement, and a lot of this executive order focuses on reinstituting secure communities, which is more collaboration between local law enforcement and immigration agents. There's also an increased emphasis on 287G agreements, which is an agreement between local law enforcement where they will act as immigration agents in some cases. And this is something that we've seen a lot in the border states and are increasingly seen in many states around the country, although there is significant pushback to this. We also have been seeing a number of increased attacks on sanctuary cities. As we all know, Chicago is a sanctuary city. We, in the past few months, have received many threats from the Trump administration to remove funding from sanctuary cities, but there was recently a lawsuit in California that was filed showing that may in fact be unconstitutional. The last piece of this increased internal enforcement focuses on new priorities for deportation. under the Trump administration, and these may include anyone who entered the United States without documents, those who may have a final order of removal, and those who have been both charged and convicted of an offense. So this, a lot of what we're seeing in the community right now are those who may have had DUIs or convictions for other drug-related offenses are now being prioritized at a higher level than they were before under the Trump administration. The second executive order is focused on the border and the enforcement of the border. So a lot of what we've been hearing is this construction of a wall that the Trump administration wants to build on the southern border. He wants to hire 5,000 new Border Patrol agents and build more detention facilities near the southern border, as well as use something that's known as expedited removal, which is a deportation without ever seeing a judge for anybody who's been found without papers within 100 miles of the border. Just something to note, the southern border wall that the Trump administration keeps referring to has been estimated to cost $21 billion. So these are very expensive operations that they want to move forward with, and we've actually seen the instituting of this executive order. The last executive order has actually been halted in court, and it's an executive order focused on restricting refugees, specifically Syrian refugees who've been indefinitely barred from the U.S. There's also a 120-day suspension on entire refugee programs. And I think we have a caller, if we can hold on one moment. Hello?
Hi, sorry about that. Yeah, I just had a quick question. If I see someone on the street who's being questioned by just a regular Chicago police officer about their status in the country, can there be any repercussions against me if I were to intervene?
There wouldn't be, and there shouldn't be any repercussions. And are you specifically referring to something in Chicago?
Yes.
So under the welcoming city ordinance that Chicago currently has, no law enforcement agent should be inquiring about a person's immigration status. It's actually goes against the current welcoming city ordinance that's in place, and there are a number of different groups, including our organization, who are actually working to strengthen that ordinance currently. There are some loopholes that allow for some collaboration with police and immigration, but if you ever see a police officer on the streets of Chicago questioning someone about their immigration status, that's illegal, and it's not illegal for you to also intervene. And what we actually would recommend is taking video or some evidence of that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Of course. Take care. All right. So thank you for the last question and call. Right now we're going to be focusing on what communities can do now that there are increased risks, and what it was important for communities to do in terms of knowing and exercising their rights, the importance of preparing an emergency plan, the importance of screening for other forms of relief. We've conducted legal clinics and have heard stories of legal aid organizations conducting legal clinics and clients coming in, and a lot of community members actually finding out that they qualify for alternative forms of relief. So we'll be talking a little bit more about that towards the end of the presentation, as well as taking action. It's important to note that you have the right to remain silent when interacting with police. you always, and this goes back to the previous caller, when speaking with police, you have the right to speak with and be represented by an attorney. And with regards to immigration court, you are actually not afforded an attorney. That is something that you have to pay for at your own expense. But in the criminal court system with the police, you have the right to be represented by an attorney. You do not have to sign anything you do not understand, and you should request a local phone call. So we recommend that people memorize phone numbers of family, friends, specifically those who are legal permanent residents or those who are citizens in case something were to happen. And anyone has the right to call their consulate. The Mexican consulate here in Chicago has a lot of resources and frequently does legal screenings as well as provides other resources for community organizations. With the police, you should never lie. We never, here in Chicago, under the ordinance, police should never be asking someone's immigration status, but you should never lie. If you choose not to speak, you can tell the police you'd like to remain silent, but you should never under any circumstance claim to be a U.S. citizen if you're not. It's very important to not sign any document that you don't understand, and to also not discuss your citizenship or immigration status with anyone other than a lawyer. And this is a tip we recommend, which seems a little bit strange, but we always put this in our presentation. We recommend that here in Chicago, it's actually illegal to hold something or hang something from your rear view mirror. And so we recommend that people do not hang things from their rear view mirror because it may provide some sort of reason for the police to pull you over and put you at increased risk. Moving on with your rights with the police, if you're stopped on the street, it's very similar. You have the right to remain silent if you choose not to speak. A lot of organizations now around Chicago have Know Your Rights cards that we're passing out to the community, and you have the right to show this Know Your Rights card to an immigration officer if they stop you. And when you're free to go, we suggest walking calmly. You're not under any circumstance required to answer any questions that you do not wish to answer, and you do have the right to remain silent. In a car, your rights are very much the same as on the street. You don't have to answer any questions you choose not to. The police are not allowed to search your vehicle without probable cause if they suspect some criminal activity is happening. And if you're a driver, you may be asked to provide your driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance. And if you don't have any of those documents, it's especially now in today's world, it's very risky to be driving without those documents. Here in Illinois, we have something called a temporary visitor's driver's license, and because we're based on the southeast side of Chicago, we always let people know that that temporary visitor's driver's license is only valid in Chicago. So if you're driving outside the state, it may or may not be recognized by local law enforcement. Moving on to your rights with immigration. If immigration ever comes to your home, you're not required to open the door, and you are not required to open the door unless ICE has a warrant signed by a judge. You do not have to open the door if they do have this warrant. We recommend that people ask that the warrant be slid under the door or that the agent hold it up to the window so that the person in the house can actually take a look at it. And if any immigration agents try to force down the door, and there have been reportings of this here, we've seen in articles written recently, you do have the right to write down the agent's badge numbers and the license plate numbers. Immigration must always have a judicial warrant signed by a judge. And with regards to workplace, this is really important because we work with a lot of workers. ICE cannot actually enter your workplace without your employer's permission, and there's actually a movement here in Chicago as well as around the country to get employers to sign agreements saying that they will not allow ICE in the workplace unless they have a warrant signed by a judge. So this is an example of an ICE warrant. It's also known as an administrative warrant. And this is a warrant that you do not need to open the door for. And you'll notice with an administrative warrant, there's a lot less text. It doesn't ask for the signature of a judge at the bottom. It says signature of an ICE official. And there's typically 4 boxes that they're checking. You do not have to open the door for this warrant. A sample order signed by a judge or a judicial warrant is a little bit different. With a judicial warrant, there's a lot more text. They typically put the name and the address of the person that they're looking for at the top of the warrant, and you always want to make sure that the name and the address of the person match up with someone in the house. There have been cases where the name or the address has been wrong, and legally you're not required to open the door if the name or the address is wrong. At the bottom, the warrant should be recently signed, and it should always have the signature of a judge at the bottom. Again, just going back, administrative warrant, a lot less text, no judicial signature. Judicial warrant, which you're required to open the door for, more text. You should always look for the name and the address to make sure that it's correct, and make sure that there's a signature of a judge. To find out if you have a deportation order, and this is something that not everybody knows if they do have one, there's a 1-800 number that you can call, and using your A number, which is the number given the number given by the government when people go through immigration proceedings, you can actually check to see if you have an immigration deportation order. And a lot of people ask, if I call this number, is that going to put me at increased risk? Anybody could be calling this number, whether it's a lawyer, a community organization. So this is a safe number to call. And to locate someone in ICE custody, there's a website that's locator.ice.gov. And using either the person's name, the date of birth, and the country, or the person's 9-digit A number and country of birth, you can locate a loved one or family member who may be in detention or in ICE custody. Raids and arrests, we've seen them happen locally and nationally, and with raids and arrests, it's always really important to take evidence, take photos and videos of the raid or arrest to document that it did happen. And there's a hotline. And I think we actually, hold on one moment, I think we have another caller. Hello? No? Okay, sorry, I think that was a false alarm. So there's a hotline called United We Dream, which can be used to report a raid. That's the number listed right here, 844-363-1423. And the number for the Mexican consulate, the emergency hotline, is 855-463-6395. These are important numbers that we always suggest people write down and memorize. Moving on to the difference between the police and immigration. In comparing the police and immigration, with the police in court, you have, if you have court or probation, you do not go. You could have a warrant placed for your arrest. In immigration court, if you have court or supervision and you do not go, you could have an order of deportation. So with immigration court, the consequences of not going to court or supervision are a lot higher. And with regards to bond, if you're going through the criminal court system and dealing with the police, if you pay 10% of your bond, you're free to go. With immigration court, going through the immigration system, You must pay 100% of the bond before you're allowed to go free. And the person who's required to pay that bond must be a person with legal status, so either a legal permanent resident or a U.S. citizen. And earlier in the training, we suggested that one of the things to do in creating a plan is to find somebody who's either a legal permanent resident or a U.S. citizen in emergency cases like this. All right, these are the basic vocabulary to exercise your rights. I wish to remain silent. I wish to speak with a lawyer as soon as possible. I do not consent to your entry. I do not consent to your search of these premises. And I will not sign any document I do not understand. When preparing an emergency plan, it's important to choose a responsible person for the care of your children. There are organizations that are conducting guardianship, short-term guardianship workshops with community members right now. They're also, our organization is one of those organizations. In addition, it's important to have a plan in writing and make sure that your family knows the plan. And in worst case scenario, if someone were to be detained or deported, what is the plan for taking care of your children? Where are the documents, the important documents being stored? Making sure that it's in a safe place and that things like passports, birth certificates, and medical records are easily accessible. And that you're also carrying with you an important list of phone numbers, including your consulate. So all of the previous numbers that we listed right here, making sure that these are carried somewhere nearby. The last thing is it's really important to get involved with the local community organization. Community organizations offer important resources, whether they're Know Your Rights trainings or legal resources to community members. They're a support network in the case that something happens. And they're also a way to learn new information about what's happening locally and nationally, whether it's here in Chicago, on the state level in Illinois, or on the national level. The last point that we want to talk about are the different forms of immigration relief. And at the beginning of the presentation, I mentioned that it's important that if you have the ability to get an immigration screening, and there are a lot of organizations doing free legal screenings right now, including our organization in partnership with the Community Activism Law Alliance, that you'd go do that. There are a number of different forms of relief, including DACA, U visas, T visas, family-based visas, and other status adjustments. And with DACA was passed in 2012 by President Obama. It's an executive order that allows young undocumented people between the ages of 16 to 30 to apply for a temporary protection against deportation for 2 years, as well as access a social security number and a work permit. It's something that many people in the community have, and it's something that right now we're suggesting if you have it, you're able to renew it. First-time applicants, we're suggesting holding off. U visas are visas for people who've been victims of crimes, and these visas are specifically for people who have been a victim of, a lot of times we see people who have been victims of domestic violence or some sort of assault. And for those people who do cooperate with law enforcement, they can apply for something called a U visa. T visa is for victims of trafficking, and then there's also family-based visas. So if you're interested in seeing if you qualify for alternative forms of relief, there's the National Immigrant Justice Center, which is a partner of our organization. You can call them at this number. And we also have a legal clinic that we offer ourselves on the southeast side. So thank you so much for tuning in today. Please feel free to visit us on our website at centrodetrabajadoresunidos.com.